desert base. Truth don't hide, it just waits for a face, Big footprints in a pine slick path. Bob Lazar files with a government laugh. Court dates lost in a sea of red tape. We ain't 10-4, we just stay awake. True crime tales in a borrowed voice. We speak for the silence, not by choice. Got boots on the dirt and eyes on the skies, digging up stories they hoped would die. Might, truth, and thunder, we don't back down. With a Bible in the glove box and boots on the ground. Aliens, lies, and backroom deals. We break that silence, 'cause the soul feels real. Military broadcast, midnight run, teaching vets how to speak what the war's done. From trigger pulls to microphone stands, from combat zones to healing hands. Public records, missing names, unsealed files, classified games. We chase what's buried, not what trends, and we pray for light at the truth's deep end. Might, truth, and thunder, we don't back down. With a Bible in the glove box and boots on the ground. Aliens, lies, and backroom deals. We break that silence, 'cause the soul feels real. Some chase fame, we chase the facts. Some fold quick, we read the tracks. It ain't paranoia if it's always been there, and we ain't scared to lay it bare. Into the storm. We ain't perfect, but we were made for this form.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Into the Weeds podcast here on Military Broadcast Radio. I'm Amber.
And I'm Alaura.
And thank you so much for being here tonight. We have a really good show for you tonight. But Alaura, what did you do this week?
I flew to Tampa and I went to a My Chemical Romance show. And then I hung out with some friends because we're from Tampa or that area. And then I flew back. So between CrimeCon and Tampa and like 2 really long layovers in DC that were just long enough to inconvenience me, but not long enough to let me explore. I've had a long week and I'm back to work too. So
yeah,
no complaints there. I'm a little tired. I was sleeping like all day until like a couple hours ago. I finally was like, okay, I got to shower.
Yeah, and I've actually been sleeping most of the week, recuperating really. So
yeah, no, I feel you.
I found myself napping, which is not something I usually do. And I don't know if it's because my body was completely worn out or if the new medicine I'm on is making me tired.
It's probably a mixed bag there. I sleep a lot and I've continued to sleep a lot. So I'm trying to recover from the stuff that I've done. It's been a lot. So, and I still have another busy couple weeks ahead of me.
Yes,
so.
We do. And I'm going to be in Springfield tomorrow with Ashley. Ashley just got there a little bit ago.
Oh,
and
did she?
Yes, she did.
Oh, I'm jealous. I wish I could go, but I have to work. I already took like 10 or 15 days off of work. So I need to stop.
Yeah.
15, that's what it was. 15 days off. So
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, at least vacation days, right?
Yeah, most of them. There were a couple that weren't vacation days, but my birthday is next week, and then after that, I have I'm probably gonna go camping. So I got a lot. So I need to rest a little bit.
Yeah. So today we have somebody that we actually met at CrimeCon, and she was so sweet to us. She acted like a mom of CrimeCon, basically going around making sure everybody was comfortable and just being a light to the expo hall, really.
Yeah, she was definitely, there was some cool people that we met, but she was definitely like the nicest, sweetest, most genuine person, I feel like. So it was really cool. So I'm glad that we can have her on today.
Yeah, and so today, and we're speaking to Maggie Zingman, and in September of 2004, her 18-year-old daughter Brittany Phillips, who had just returned to her home in Tulsa from college in Florida, she was settling into her new apartment at the Glen Eagles apartment complex. On the night of September the 27th, she was last seen feeling not well. And days later, Brittany was found in her apartment. She was sexually assaulted and strangled. And this is really going to frustrate you guys because despite DNA collected at the scene and tested, her killer has still never been identified. And over the past 20 years, Dr. Maggie Zingman, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, you can't forget that one.
Yeah. She carries Brittany's story across the country in her caravan to catch a killer. And I'm telling you what, if I had something happen to one of my family members, you better believe I would be going just as hard as Maggie's going.
Absolutely. We saw it in the parking lot. It's beautifully done. And I
Yes.
think it really gets the message across that needs to be.
Yeah, and she's pushing for advancements in DNA technology, transparency in cold case investigations, and justice not only for her daughter, but for other families still waiting for answers with their cold cases. So without further ado, we're going to actually bring Maggie up.
The interview of the week is brought to you by Jersey Mike's, a sub above.
Hello, Maggie.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, this is such a gift to me anytime that I can, speak about our case, speak about the issues with cold case. And you two, I'm not sure I was the caretaker of Crime Company. You guys were so sweet. We just automatically connected.
Yes, we did. And we've now found out all kinds of different commonalities between us. So it's been very interesting.
It really has.
So, Maggie, can you tell us a little bit about Brittany beyond the tragedy before we get into the actual case?
Yeah, just real briefly, she was born foreboding in a way, looking like an angel. Both she and her brother were birthed through a C-section. So she came out with this perfectly round head, no hair for 2 years. And after 2 years, she grew these just beautiful blonde curls. And that was the way she looked for the whole time. But she was very creative when she was young. She danced, she did gymnastics. She was also very empathetic and also very adventurous. We actually called her middle name as Accident because by the time she was 3, she had stitches in her chin, stitches in her forehead. She was fearless. Yeah, that's my beautiful daughter. That was maybe 6 months before she was killed that we had those pictures taken. But she would, I, like you said, we had some similarities. I went to college in Florida, then got married to her dad and had her down there. And we would go back and forth between Florida and Louisville. And she had these long blonde curls, and you've probably seen some of the pictures. She would wear a hat. She just was creative in her dressing and stuff. And she would stop traffic and people would go, "Oh, why did you perm your daughter's hair?" I mean, she was just, I'm prejudiced, but she was so beautiful. But, she just, she reached out to people. She would just talk to people. After she died, even a lot of people who knew her said, I wasn't part of her group, but she would sit and help me with studying because along with that beauty, she actually went to Eckerd College on a full ride chemistry scholarship. So,
That's
but
incredible.
yeah, and she was empathetic. And of course, I was a trauma psychologist and working in trauma right around the time she was born is when I started. And so she grew up knowing about my work. And actually, after about a week of working at the Oklahoma City Murrah bombing in 1995, because I'm a first responder, I went up there because I was helping with, it was the first time we ever had people come from all over the country into something horrible like that. 9/11 hadn't happened. It was really one of the first, really well publicized disasters. And so we were having a lot of the first responders going home after a week and not being able to describe, and this will probably, go along with what a lot of vets go through, but they weren't able to describe what they went through. So I was helping man the helpline and talk to them and help them, get services, but also normalize. And so going up there, it was one of the first times people really did those fences, which now are very common. You see the stuffed animals, you see the flowers, but that was the first time. And I remember the first time she came up there with me. And again, it was a couple of weeks after the bombing happened. She just got really tearful and she felt bad because there were a number of kids in, a child care place that were also killed. And it was hard for her, but, it was really, she was about 8 or 9. So I was able to, sort of process it with her, but she always had that empathy from then to the time, she was murdered and stuff. But, that's a real basic description of her.
No, everything I've learned about her seems to be, she was a woman who was determined and so incredibly intelligent.
Right. She actually was planning to go into cancer research because she had a grandmother that had died while she was still alive from cancer. What she never knew, of course, is that 8 months after I lost her, I lost my mother to anaplastic thyroid cancer, which just comes on and hits you and takes you, So, she had this beauty, but she was wanting to change the world. So, I guess she's still changing the world, not in the way we had thought she would.
Yes.
But.
No, yeah, she really is. With that van going everywhere, I'm sure you get stopped a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, if I'm in a rest stop, just locally or anywhere, and that was the purpose. Although I didn't know the full purpose of when I created something like this, I wanted something that would grab people's attention and even be something that, if they saw me on the road, they could find me. And so somehow, maybe with Brittany's help, I don't know what I believe, but, I came up with Caravan to Catch a Killer. And like you said, I was just on my 24th tour, which ended at CrimeCon, but I've been on tours all to the Northeast, Southeast, Northwest, Southwest. And I'll get emails from somebody say, oh yeah, I saw you in the mountains in Washington, or I saw you in San Diego, or I saw you in Florida, just from seeing the car and then looking it up. And, I've had so much local media across all those 48 states I've been in that there's at least stories out there where that pulls things up.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of stories out there about you and your tenacity.
Hard-headedness, obstinance.
Hey, I call it tenacity for justice.
That's what you
Yeah,
get.
well, and it's being a mother, like you said earlier. It's being a mother, and when people go, "Oh, that's so brave," or "That's so unbelievable," I say, no. As a parent, you either crumble and fall apart, or you find that doing something in honor of them is the way that you learn how to carry the loss. And it's a big lesson of how to deal with trauma or anything in your life. You can let it tear you apart, and then her killer gets another victim, or you have to find a way to walk towards it, through it, and live in honor of it.
Yeah. And not wallowing in depression.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay to be sad, but if you allow yourself to be sad and not get caught in and we'll probably get into this later, but the whys or the would-haves or the should-haves or the could-haves, none of those things can be answered, and those things are what cause you to fall deep into that depression. And I just knew if I crumbled, so did her memory. And egotistical mom, I want everybody to know Brittany, so I can't not do this.
Everyone should know her. So
I muted your mic just for a second. I think so. We've got an echo going on, so whenever I talk, I'll mute your mic.
Make it nice and complicated.
Sorry, guys.
She said, "No, you can't speak. I'm cutting you off." No, I'm just playing.
Okay, so Maggie,
Just remember to unmute her.
yes, I
Okay.
will. What do you feel are the most misunderstood parts of Brittany's case? Because there's a lot in this case. Like when you actually made like a whole printout for everybody at CrimeCon.
So beautiful.
And when I was going through it, I was just like, oh man, this is hard to follow. Not because of what you did, but just because of the case itself.
Mm-hmm.
So can you clear up a few things that are misunderstandings?
Yes, well, and that's exactly why I created that, because at the other two crime cons or whenever I'm traveling, and now when I talk about the case and how it started and where it is now, I watch people listening to me and they're going, and then they're going, sort of like our puppies do to us, and, it was very confusing. So I came up with this timeline because it doesn't make sense. The first 10 years, I really had great detective work, great detectives, great head of homicide, great police chief. They taught me everything I know.
Mm-hmm.
They taught me what I could know, what I couldn't know, what I could know, but I couldn't share. They taught me about how things can hurt the case. But you have to remember, this was 2004. Back then, we were just learning about DNA, and familial DNA was a hush hush. We were working to pass DNA at arrest, and we couldn't even talk about the familial DNA because people were fighting us so much on the false belief that DNA is an invasion of privacy. In 2012, the Supreme Court said it wasn't. But so the confusion partially is that we had DNA. We ruled out probably up to 1,000 suspects with the detective looking at suspects saying, oh, this is so good. I need to, go look at him. And that's sort of why the caravan came, because as we were ruling out 600, 700, I said, how do I get this story nationwide? And it wasn't the type of story, even now, that piques national news interest. It's just an everyday murder in the middle of the night to a middle-class American young girl, nothing sensational. Yeah. And I was told that. I was told a lot of times, well, your story just doesn't have a hook. So just the fact that we had great investigative work the first till 2012 is the first thing some people don't understand when they say that, why isn't the case solved? So that's one thing. Do you want me to go on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. The next thing is, with the second detective, I slowly was learning about DNA, familial DNA, and knowing that some people were doing it. But it wasn't till about 2017 that after oh gosh, my brain's dead. The killer in California.
Oh,
Golden Gate. Yeah. With that raised a lot of issues because of how they went for it. A lot of the DNA databases didn't know that PD was wanting to use it. So that was like 16, I think. And I was actually in the city where that was happening when it came out. And the second detective said, see, there's all these problems with it. So it took another year or two. But finally, I heard Parabon was doing phenotype sketches and C.C. Moore doing genetic analysis. So we got the phenotype sketch, and I think it came out in January of 2017. Within a week, hundreds of tips and stuff. And then I get a call, and this has already been publicized, so I'm not sharing something that I shouldn't. But I got a call from somebody at Parabon, and they said, are you aware that TPD didn't want to do the familial analysis? And I went, what? And this is with the second detective, where progressively he was shutting down more and more. So you're talking about 2017. I said, the usual language which you would say with that. And so I pushed and prodded, and finally we got it sent to C.C. Moore. And during this process, it took about 2 years, which is not that long, really, because you have to analyze the tree from anybody in the world to down to certain type of cultures. And then you have to go up and down these trees to find, somebody. And the first year they couldn't tell me everything, but they let me know. We're looked at a maybe 17th relative, which only means is a small percentage possibility of somebody. And then finally that database was running out and they were still small. A lot of groups were now opting in, so they were getting bigger. And also with PD, you also have your profiles going up into CODIS. So our profile, the blood and semen, and I'll explain that, was probably by 17 going through CODIS 2 million times because it was going once, twice, a month or something. So it took another year. So do you want me to go on from here? Do you have any questions?
No, I'm listening.
We're sat listening.
Okay. So I was on my maybe 21st caravan. I was in Yakima, Washington. And before I went on the caravan, I knew they were getting near. They couldn't tell me everything, but they at least shared some things, which TPD right now doesn't under the tutelage or the whatever of the current chief. But I said, should I go in this caravan? I don't want to be all the way over on the West Coast and something happens.
Yeah.
And I was told, no, you can go. Well, I'm in Yakima, Washington, doing a podcast on, I think, Unresolved. I can't remember who it was, but all of a sudden I get a call and I knew it was coming because I had been told by somebody else that they had a match. And so I answer the phone call. It's my second detective. And he goes, Maggie, we had a direct match. Not a brother, not a father, not an uncle. It is the person's DNA of the blood and semen.
That's big.
Yeah.
This blood and semen was not found inside of Brittany. It was found on the bed. And his next words were, and he's not our killer. When he said that, I felt like somebody had just told me that Brittany died because it didn't make sense. How could he not be our killer? Mm-hmm. I learned enough about DNA. I knew, there had to be other evidence, but it just seemed like blood and semen. But what I was told by that then detective, he said, we have an airtight alibi. And I go, what's the airtight alibi? And he never, ever told me what the airtight alibi, but what he did tell me was, well, along with the airtight alibi, I talked to the young man and I don't feel, he showed anything of being the killer. And then I talked to his girlfriend at that time and her father. And I'm going, why would you talk to the father of the girlfriend of the person who's the suspect? And I immediately knew why, because Brady only had two friends who would have a father that they would need to talk to. Mm-hmm. And one was the young lady, which I can talk about a little bit, who was with her that night before she died. And she had dropped that friend off. Her father was a DA, and he was, somebody who was involved with criminal justice. So that made sense. But what made more sense was my daughter's best friend's father was a Tulsa police.
Oh, wow.
And this Tulsa policeman, what I found out later, was called on the wellness check. And if he had gone on that wellness check, he got called elsewhere. But Brittany and her best friend would stay with me, would stay with her family. Mm-hmm. It would have been like finding almost his own daughter.
Oh, wow.
So, people go blood and semen, it didn't make sense to me. I really, until recently, I still thought there was a chance that he could have been our killer because, it just didn't make sense. But what had happened, it's thundering. What had happened was that Brittany, being the sweet young girl she was at 18, felt bad for her 17-year-old girlfriend and allowed them to sleep over. and she would let them sleep in the bed and she would sleep on the couch. Some people say, well, didn't she wash the sheets because it was the weekend before? I said, well, I don't know if 18-year-olds, they don't think like us.
Very true.
And the excuse for the blood, it was very, very, very minuscule. The detective then said, it could have been a bloody nose or something. So there's all these questions. So I raced back in 2 days from Yakima, Washington to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to be there for the news release. And I say, what are you going to tell him? He just said, oh, we'll just talk about how we looked at a suspect and he wasn't our killer. I said, what do you mean you looked at a suspect? I said, CeCe Moore made a direct match. Aren't we going to say that? He said, I don't know what we're going to say. So I have a beautiful reporter, Laurie Fulbright, who's been with our CBS local station for 30 years. She's been with me since day one. She and I broke the news that morning after TPD broke it in a different way, because TPD said we had DNA that a phenotype sketch was made from. We got many tips from these pictures, and one tip we went out and interrogated him, and he wasn't our killer. Versus what Laurie and I broke, which is the truth, is that after a year and a half of analysis, Parabon's CeCe Moore made CeCe, I was afraid my puppies were going to do that. CeCe Moore, after a year and a half analysis, CeCe Moore of Parabon made a direct match to the DNA that also the phenotype sketch was made from, and he's not our killer. So I think probably your viewers are aware of, if you say a tip comes from a sketch and that person's not the killer, then you think, oh, that sketch must still be valid, i.e., a white Caucasian male with blue eyes, blondish hair, versus the DNA from the blood and semen was identified to be the individual. We went out and interrogated him, and he's not our killer. So we still get tips from that picture, because Tulsa police to this day refuses to, this is where the case starts getting crazy, refuses to say that it was a direct match. They would not let CeCe Moore. CeCe Moore wanted to do a story with me on her ABC show about how sometimes you can have DNA and you're not going to be able to get your killer, whether he is or not, because he isn't most likely. They wouldn't let me go on that show. They wouldn't let her talk to the media. When we got the second funding, when I got the second funding for DNA, they wouldn't let it be sent back to Parabon for a more DNA analysis. So they still refuse to say that she made a direct match. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't make sense. Hold on. No, it doesn't make sense. And it's very confusing, because why would they keep that sketch out there if they've already said that that guy is not the perpetrator?
So, yeah, they don't keep the sketch out there, but the sketch has the internet life of its own. But because they've never said that the DNA had a direct match, that's the problem. I mean, I've educated a lot of people when they say, oh, there's this guy. And I say, well, that might be, but that sketch is no longer valid. That's, one of the problems. It doesn't make sense why they wouldn't let CeCe Moore talk about it. Why, since she made a direct match, why wouldn't we send our DNA back there? I got funding from Paul Holes when he was with Jensen and Holes, and Polly Katowski, who's a great writer who now works with other podcasters. And that money initially was going to go to Parabon, and at the last minute, the second detective told me, no, Paul Holes said it had to go to Othram. and Otham's good too, but Paul, I talk to everybody, as you all know. I learned how to schmooze with people. And I called Paul, and he said, no, I recommended Othram, but I didn't say it couldn't go to Parabon or anything. This happened in Tulsa. Yes, it did happen. Somebody was just, oh, I don't know.
No, you're good.
Yeah, we just stared up on
Okay. So that's the crazy thing. But the other crazy thing is that when I got the money, I think it was in 2019, it was soon after, because the announcement that he wasn't our killer was in 2019. I got the money pretty soon after, and it took till 2022 to get the paperwork going for us to send it off. And then the second detective retired over a weekend and hadn't sent the paperwork off. So the paperwork for the other DNA, which now brings up another question, was not sent off and signed till 2023, which is when Othram got it. So here's another twist and turn. And if you look at that piece of paper I gave you, it says timeline for the 2 pages. And then the 3rd and 4th page say twists and turns, because it's crazy. It's like a very badly made for TV movie. I learned that the second DNA that was being sent off was from underneath the nails,
which is more significant.
Yeah.
I mean, that's somebody just wrote Jason White. I know Jason, and Jason has looked into it, but here's the problem. Anybody who's working with TPD has to follow rules and orders. And Jason's very supportive. But if the head chief says, Othram, you can't talk to anybody other than the current detective, they won't let Othram talk to any of the old detectives, old head of homicides. The old detectives are people who solve the cases. But going back to the DNA, I warned you, I zig and zag.
You're fine.
But going back to the DNA, why didn't they send it off? I don't remember them. I know that their first detective told me he was there to see all the swabs taken. When the envelopes happened, which we'll talk about, we looked at the medical examiner's report. We can't find any of the reports of the swabs. So what my concern is, and I just started thinking about this at CrimeCon because of great questions that people were asking, is did they lose that? Is that why they didn't send it out? Tulsa police will not answer any of my questions. I just got an email from the detective, first one that I've gotten, even though I send monthly texts and emails because they won't return my calls, that said he just admitted that our DNA analysis is in maintenance. I've known it's been in maintenance for about 5 months, but they just told me that, now. So, but I'm zigging and zagging. But the DNA underneath the nails is the reason partially that I know that first DNA is no longer considered our killer.
Yeah.
At least not primary, because to send another profile out, you have to make sure it doesn't match any of the other ones. So we knew the blood and semen matched each other, but we had like 2 or 3 mixed profiles, which is a whole bunch of things. But we knew that the profile from underneath the nails did not match the boyfriend. And we knew it was a different culture.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me many years because people kept saying, oh, well, that second detective really, because I'm working, one of my detectives for 1 year after the good one is now head county sheriff. I couldn't survive without him. So from the minute that they said that the DNA from the first one was not our killer, I was working with him behind the scenes. I've been working with Cheryl McCollum Mack, which most people should know, for behind the scenes. the old head of homicide. There's a lot of retired TPD on the Sheriff's Cold Case Task Force.
Mhm.
I've been working with them. They've been offering their services to look at the case since 2020. And around 2022, it looked like Tulsa maybe was going to work with us. And then in 2023, they said no. And now they won't. They refuse to allow any cold case. They won't respond to Cheryl. They say to me, oh, we have the best detectives here. People come from all across the U.S. to ask us for advice. We don't need anybody else. You know, I've traveled 330,000 miles through 48 states. I talk to many police departments. It's not about, oh, let's catch them making a mistake or they've done something bad. It's called a fresh set of eyes.
Mhm.
This police department with the current chief, and I know they're listening because they listen to everything I do. He refuses to allow, and I'm being told, because I know other cold case families, and I know a lot of retired people who are working on the task force, that other people are not getting their stuff looked at.
So is it just all ego or what?
Maybe a little bit of ego, corruption, potentially.
Yeah, choose one, because they won't talk to me. You know, I was allowed one meeting about 2 years ago, and at the meeting, it was a meeting because they hadn't told me who the new detective was after my detective retired in 2023. And so I just said, can we get an update? I want to find if you're using MVAC, you know, touch DNA. I just want to find out what's going on.
Mhm.
And so the then deputy chief, who's now chief, started the meeting with, so Dr. Zingman, you have a problem with how we're doing our case? And he has all his department heads in there. I said, I don't have a problem. I just want to know what's going on.
Mhm.
And, you know, later I said, you know, that was pretty condescending what you did. And he said, well, I checked with all my department heads and they said I didn't say it that way. And yet my detective who works as a contractor with them said, yeah, he did. Yeah.
And you're a professional victim advocate, right?
Well, I'm more than that. But the funny thing is, I don't know. I've trained victim advocates in Oklahoma. I'm a trauma-focused psychologist. I've been working in trauma since 85, and then for the last almost 30 years, I've had my PhD and worked as a psychologist. So one of my things, because I work in trauma, is the state attorney general had asked me a number of times to train their victim advocates. And one thing we do with victim advocates is we say the victim or / survivor has to be the person who decides things. Even though we know we need a SANE exam, you know, the sexual assault nurse exam, you can't force them into it. You can't force them to have somebody be in a meeting. So my meetings with Tulsa police, I'm told I can't have a meeting with them unless their victim advocate is in the room with me. And she's very sweet, but again, I have no need for her to be in there. And they say, no, you cannot have a meeting with us. And I go, so you're covering yourself. You're not, it has nothing to do with me as a survivor. And I can handle it, but other people are going to be intimidated.
Yeah.
You know, that's nuts. And the weird thing is Tulsa police, active cases wise, they're becoming very trauma informed. That's why Jason White is so good at what he does and stuff. And he trains a lot of people and everything. But the reason that many of us in many states are fighting for Homicide Survivor Rights Act is because how can you say at 20 years that you don't want to allow anybody else to look at the case?
Yeah.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah. So they're not doing anything now, right?
You don't know. They could be doing everything. I was told that, yes, the DNA is now in maintenance, that my detective hasn't talked to Othram in about 6 months, and he also told me, because I've been asking for FBI involvement for the last 5 to 7 years,
Uh-huh.
and they've never said anything. But I said, have we thought about maybe getting FBI involvement? And I've been told by some people, I think there is some. But I was told by the detective, who's usually saying what his chief is telling him, is that families aren't allowed to know what agencies are helping with the case.
I think after 20 years, they should be a lot more open with people.
They should be a lot more open after 10 years. To say that a family, basically, I was told by the chief that he wants his detectives to focus on the cases and not talk to families, that families can talk with administration. And I'm sure you all do this, read some of the research on best practices, because watch out, people, I'm a scientist too. So don't try to snow me under with this stuff, which they hate me for that. That's why they don't like me. But best practices in criminal justice, they say that the cases that get solved are the ones where, even if it's just little, that a detective goes, I'm thinking of you, nothing new. Hey, we're sending it to some agencies. Hey, we're looking at maybe talking to the FBI. When a family member is sitting there not going, why won't they tell me anything? What's going on? What's going on? When they're just going, hey, I'm looking forward to my monthly talk with them, then their brain feels free enough to remember things.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. They're either inept, have done something wrong, or it doesn't make sense. Because if you all know on that timeline, I mean, not identifying the first DNA that it was identified. The second DNA, why didn't they send that off? And then we get in 2023, at the same time that Tulsa police decide not to let a cold case group look at it, we get an envelope.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The envelope that you found out about so
20
long
years
after.
later.
Yeah.
Oh, God love my ex-husband. Not. So real quickly, I get a call from my ex-husband who's becoming Catholic or something. And he asked me if it's okay if he annuls our marriage. And I was like, hello, the minute I divorced you, I annulled it in my brain, but that's okay. What happened was he said, okay, so that's fine, but don't be mad at me. And I said, well, I'm not mad at you. I have nothing to do with you. He said, well, look at this picture and then tell me you're not mad at me. And so I looked at this picture, and it's a card, and I'm not going to say what color it was or anything like that, but I said, and he goes, look at the stamp. Now, for your listeners, if you've ever bought a stamp at a kiosk, and somebody just gave me a point about this, which is a really good point, but if you've ever bought a stamp at a kiosk, you put your letter on the way thing, and then it tells you, and you write in the address, and then it tells you what you owe. So you put a card in usually. And what comes out is a piece of paper that has adhesive on the back, but what's on the front is the printing of where the stamp was bought, time, and date.
Yeah.
It's not a stamp that was on the envelope and then stamped. It was printed that way. And that stamp was 2 days after Brittany died. What he told me was that 10 days after he got home, he started talking about all these weird things, and it's why I divorced him in 89. But anyways, he started telling me all these weird things happened when he got home. And then 10 days after he was home from the funeral, he said this envelope came, and he said he showed it to his dad and to his kids and his wife. And it's really important to remember this right now, that he showed it to all these people, and everybody looked at it and stuff. And he said, and then I put it in a box because it was the only piece of Brittany that I had, and I forgot about it.
You forgot about it.
He
And
forgot
didn't
about
tell
it for
you.
20 years. He forgot about a laptop she had for 10 years. He forgot about a computer she had borrowed from him. But anyways, that being said, he said, I'll send it to the police. I said, no, I've lost evidence. Send it to me. And so I got it. And then I called the police. And I gave it to them within a day. But 2 days after Brady dies, a stamp. So possibility, she was so busy because she was at school, and she was at a urgent care that night after school. Then I talked to her. Then for the next 2 nights, I didn't talk to her. The third night, which would be a day after that stamp, I called and she didn't answer. And it was 1 o'clock the next morning when I got notified. But so I called the detective and I say, can you please, just come to the hotel? Because I was still living in Lawton and I stayed at a hotel to pick it up. So he comes to pick it up, not just him, but his head of homicide, Lieutenant Watkins, the one who has lied about whether we have requested cold case help, and another the officer. So before they picked up, they told me, well, we don't know if we can do it because we're really understaffed. We have just one police officer going out on call. Sometimes some calls have to wait 2 hours. So then they come with 3 people to pick up this envelope. And the head of homicide says to me, I said, well, I'm going to talk to media because most likely a friend mailed it. No, you can't talk to media about this. It'll hurt the case. I go, hurt the case? How? He goes, because somebody could say that they mailed it. I said, I'm not going to show it. He said, it won't make a difference. And then he goes, and my God, who would, and meanwhile, I have somebody on the phone listening to this conversation, so I'm not just making it up. He goes, and really, like, who would remember mailing something? And it was 18 years at that point. Who would remember mailing something 18 years ago? And I looked him straight in the eye and I said, if I mailed something for somebody and I learned 3 days later that she was murdered, I sure as hell remembered.
Yeah.
So they took it, didn't tell me anything about it. So this email where I finally, after half a year, get a response from TPD. In this email, I always ask 3 questions. Are you willing to allow cold case people? What's going on with the envelope? And is DNA at maintenance? So he answered DNA is at maintenance. But what he said about the envelope was, we got it back from the FBI because they had told me they sent it to the FBI. The only people's handprints on it were Brittany's.
Well, that doesn't make sense.
2 days after.
I mean your husband's,
Yeah.
your ex-husband.
Let's not even talk about that. It goes to the post office.
Yes.
Yeah.
It gets pulled out of a bin.
Yes.
There's
Logic.
So, I mean, he didn't even think, and I've just started saying this, so I'm sure it'll get back to them. That's pretty damn stupid.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I agree.
He was probably told to say that. I mean, and the whole thing is that ever since this, I have a lot of investigators. I have a lot of people. News Nation was trying to do a story after Orlando Crime Con for a year, but Tulsa wouldn't respond back to them. The People story that we had, was talking about, because that was from the Nashville, that story came up. I was talking about all these twists and turns and everything. Not one of those things got written in the story because they got the detective to say 1 or 2 nice things about how I'll probably be the reason the case is solved. But all my criticism got taken out because everybody wants to have the PD to be part of the story. Criminal justice won't do our story because TPD will never respond. So, I mean, there's so many twists and turns, but if anybody wants to be a little bit more confused and a little bit clearer on things, I will gladly send them the timeline, because listening to myself it's like,
So Maggie, there's something that I want to know. So in Brittany's bedroom, in the closet, was there was supposedly an access point
yes.
to her apartment in there? Can you explain that to everybody?
Yeah. So this shows how good my detective was. I mean, really, he kept turning over things, but my detective was 6'3" ish. And he comes at I get to the apartment at like 4. He gets to the apartment about 6 a.m. and stuff. And he's asked me questions about how things look and stuff. And he walks into the closet, points to the mess on the floor. I say, well, that's pretty typical for Brittany. That wasn't odd. But then he goes, did you know about this? And I go, what? And he's 6'3". So he reaches up and he pushes up, maybe it's a 2-foot square thing, and he lifts himself up into the attic.
Oh.
She was in a 2nd-story apartment, 2 on the back, 2 on the front. She was in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Those 4 apartments at that point, they've since fixed it. But those apartments all had common access to all the 4 upstairs apartments.
And what kind of angles have they, or what kind of results have come from investigating that?
Well, again, back in the day with the first detective, he looked at hundreds of suspects. He looked at cable layers, telephone, people who fixed things around there. It was right next door to the high school she went. So all the custodians there, he looked at Sons of Sons. He went to nearby phone stores and utility payments. Now, the thing about this is that we were using the DNA mostly from the blood and semen to say, no, this guy isn't a match.
Yeah.
No, this guy isn't a match. No, this guy isn't a match. So when they said that DNA was not a killer, and knowing that it was the DNA that was identified, they should have gone back over all those old suspects, because we went back to ground zero. That's the thing that kills me. But every time if I've asked them, did you go back over this one? Because we had some really good suspects that maybe would fit the profile now. They tell me, we've done what we need to. You don't need to question who were. I mean, how dare they? I mean, you treat me this way. You just make me more of a fighter. And I have fun thinking of ways that I'm going to get back at you and show you out. But most people aren't that way. Most people, this would devastate them. And I talked to families here in Oklahoma, but part of my caravan this year was Moms Across Borders, where I'm having somebody who has a murder in Washington State and Wyoming that they can't resolve, one in Atlanta that they can't resolve, one in Nashville they can't resolve, one in Denver. And when we're all saying the same things, this is where we nationally have to have a voice, because we don't get the due process that criminals do. And I'm all for due process. I am, very upset that certain things aren't getting due process now. But this is ridiculous, And then I've had old detectives want to talk to the new detective about certain types of suspects. They won't let them. They will not. They told, and this has already been out there, but, Othram was hoping that I could talk with some of the old detectives to see if they were willing to talk to them to maybe cut down on some of that tree building to, find a killer. And so I went, this was after Orlando. And so about 2 or 3 months after Orlando, I called back Michael, who's great, one of the great caseworkers with Othram. And he was there at CrimeCon, and hopefully you all got to meet him. And he told me, he said, I called him and I said, they're all willing to talk to you. He said, Maggie, I was told by Tulsa police that I cannot talk to anybody except the current cold case detective. I can't talk to any of the old detectives.
That's
Old detective who's head sheriff now has the cold case task force. Old detective Mike Huff, who's was head of homicide. Dave Walker, who's head of homicide. They're not allowed to talk to anybody else. And like I said, we now know that, Othram is at maintenance, which means they've used all the databases they can. And maintenance means you have to wait till more databases build. But that's where it should be going to the FBI, but they won't tell me if it has or hasn't.
and
They should tell family when it goes to the FBI. There's
and
no
it
reason.
has been and it has been run through all of the JED match and all of everything that. Yeah.
So here's the problem: is that with databases, you get certain cultures that are not as full to the extent of other cultures. So let's say that you've identified that it could be one of the 3 cultures that have very small databases. Those are the ones that usually go to maintenance. Those are the ones that need the FBI to go to Interpol, to go to South America, to go to Japan or China, because those databases are not as big. And then too, as you know, CODIS, but half the problem is still there's many states that still don't take DNA at arrest, even though all it does is get the criminals off the street earlier and actually gets out the false imprisonments. So, but I could go on and on like I usually do.
No,
you need to go on and on because clearly nobody's listening. I mean, the best.
Well, you all are listening. People are listening, but the people who should listen aren't. But what keeps me going is that I have Cheryl McCollum. I have you guys. Yeah. I have Dr. Laura Petler. I have Gold Shields. I have, so many podcasters, new people that I met. And hopefully they're all calling TPD, offering their services. And even though TPD may say no, they're going to be hearing from a lot of people. And that's what I say. If you have any type of services, offer them to TPD.
Yeah.
You'll get a no most likely, but they're going to have, if they have 10, 12, 15 people, they can't keep ignoring this. And why would they? It doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. I don't understand why, if we have the technology to get it done and there's an overabundance of people willing to help, why they're not doing that. That just makes no sense. It makes them look really bad. And it makes them look corrupt. And I'm
not saying they are. But for them not to do this, that's what it looks like.
Exactly. And I think it would go a long way if they did something to earn your trust back.
In the very
and part of it is, and I get this from so many of the 8 families that I met this year on the road, is they go, you just go home. You don't understand criminal justice. Well, my response to them is, we're hitting the 21st anniversary on October 4th. So I say to them, I've been studying criminal justice for the last 20 years. I was taught, and they hate when I say this, I was taught by some of the best the first 10 years. So, but they're telling that to other families, and that will shut people down. It's ridiculous. It's unfortunate. The one thing that I sort of moving towards what I do, the one thing I say is, the one thing you can't do is live in the if onlys. If I was waiting, and it's for the family, the reason I say this, because these are the families that get most hurt by this. When somebody lives after just, a couple of years in the, if only it be solved, I'd feel better. If only it get convicted, I feel better. If only I had done this, or if I had done that. those if onlys, you have to learn how to live in spite of it, because of it, and in honor of it. And those if onlys, there's a lot of people who don't know any different, and that's where they're living. And so when police departments do stuff like this, they give up. And rightly so, because they feel like it's never going to get solved. So I'm just, I just don't know how to do it, And so part of my mission is just trying to help every single damn family that I can, because I refuse to, if I can't change them, I'm going to change how we deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you were talking about moms across borders. Can you explain that? And I think it's an amazing idea. So I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah, well, it's still in the forming stages, but it came about because my first stop in Georgia, I was talking to these parents, and both of them had murders that happened in different states, and they were having issues with crossing borders. So I thought, oh, this is moms across borders. But then in Nashville and then in Virginia, in Roanoke and Lynchburg, I started going, but we're all having the same issues. So then it was that, oh, we're moms with same issues across borders. And so we began talking about it. And so part of it was twofold. One, gaining a power in the voices, because like I said earlier, if we have somebody saying, this isn't just a Tulsa problem, this isn't just a Nashville problem, this isn't just Wyoming problem, whatever, this is a national problem where homicide families are being shut down and turned away from their own cases, and stuff. And then we were talking about different things we've done. And, I've become pretty savvy. I mean, I had billboards before anybody else did. Mine were in 2007 when Lamar Billboard donated them from 2007 to 2009. But, I've learned about a lot of things. What I didn't know was about Seasons of Justice. Seasons of Justice is a group that funds reward funds, billboards, different things. So I started going, okay, so Moms Across Borders is one, gaining that voice, but it also needs to be a clearinghouse where we learn of, I hate to say it, but new homicide families or cold case families, and we start giving them a playbook. Now, there are other groups that are doing that, but we need that. And so I think it's that joint. We need power in the voice, because like anything, it's when you have more voices saying the same thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. There's so many that I have never heard of that, it's like there's so many cases out there that you just can't possibly know them all. Yeah. But it is good to have a place where you can learn about it and a support system.
Yeah. And how to, and, I do a lot of that as a psychologist. For many years, I was presenting at conferences where it was, and doing a lot of panels and stuff where it was PD, FBI, lawyers, judges, cold case families, missing families. Every year I work with the missing groups here and do presentations on trauma. So the more we can inform people, unfortunately in this world, many of us are learning more and more about trauma. But it's, it's an extension of this ever evolving path that none of us choose, but we get thrown in. And it's an evolving of this family, which everybody says that we never choose. But once you join it, it's the most unbelievable family that you've ever met, and that, includes all of you all too, and, the other thing, the one other aspect of it, because it's just evolving. I haven't even written up everything, but I got more than 50 people to sign up for it at CrimeCon, including the 15 or so who I met on the road.
Awesome.
But the other thing is, and any of you CrimeCon people or anywhere you want it, I present for free. I love traveling, obviously, in my fourth wrapped car, so I'll travel anywhere. But one thing that I've been trying to present at CrimeCon, but other places that deal with cold case and everything, is we need to know about the impact of trauma. And the reason I bring that up here is because, and we talked about this, is that, we, for 30 plus years, 35 really, I've researched and worked in and understand what people bring to the traumatic incident. And so a lot of that is not just the families, it's the first responders, it's the podcasters, it's the reporters, it's even, I was talking with some people, with some of the very well-known shows, and even they acknowledge, and I think at regular psychology conferences, when we present on this, a lot of people, it's why I love my work with veterans, because what I'm trying to do is help people to understand that response to trauma is normal. It's normal, logical, expected reactions to abnormal events. The events are what's abnormal, but the way we respond is normal. I don't know if you all knew it, but at least 3 or 4 people got sent to my table. You all might have even sent me somebody, but because they were getting triggered by stuff at CrimeCon.
Oh, wow.
I can believe it. It's a really heavy place.
Yeah. And yeah, I could totally see that.
Well, and what a victim, I do, it's titled something to the point of what a victim brings to the event, but it normalizes a lot of stuff. And I was really surprised because everywhere I ever present, they always have this may, have some impact on you. And I saw one victim advocate thing way out in the hall, but there should be rooms. And some of us have talked about that, of maybe getting together a volunteer corps, of having some rooms where people know that they can go to sort of decompress, or maybe briefly just, not do therapy, but just briefly sort of process some stuff. Yeah. So I'm asking,
Great idea.
If you went to CrimeCon, suggest that for next year, whether it's me or somebody else.
Yeah, it's definitely excuse me, it's definitely an overload of information, and it's tragic information and traumatic information. So, and I didn't even go to any of the breakout sessions or anything because, I went for like 10 minutes, but I started falling asleep. So I had to get up.
It was boring.
Not because it was boring. Yeah,
I know.
It's hard
because we have long hours at our tables.
Yes, exactly.
We lost our voices just about.
Yeah. So, yeah, but it's such an informative place, but it's an overload of traumatic information. So I think that's a great idea to have that there.
Especially since
it's just, it's just caring about, because, 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 women, have been assaulted, that we all, in these days and times, from COVID to everything else, shootings, we've all been exposed to things, and I love the fact that families share their experience. I think that's very helpful. But I think we have to have some of the other side of it, of just normalizing the trauma response and normalizing it across all traumas, because that's one of the hardest things. Is sometimes people think, oh, well, my trauma is different than others. At the core base, no, the response is the same. It's self-blame, it's shame, it's wondering why, it's trying to avoid. I'm reading some things that people are saying. I'd love to get a copy of this, because I probably have missed some things. But hopefully you'll give them a way to contact me. So
yes.
But anyways, there's that.
No, I was gonna say something. I can't remember what it was.
But with CrimeCon, there's so many people that get into true crime because of something that they've experienced in their lives. And like you said, a trauma area or somewhere they can decompress or talk to somebody if they're able would be so amazing, because a lot of people don't realize how much something really affects them until they're put in a situation where they have to confront that trauma directly.
Exactly. And I learned, I was a trauma survivor before I ever came into this field. and in my teens and 20s, and got some help in my late 20s. And I didn't think you could get better. And I just kept pushing it away and pushing it away and stuff. And the one thing that my therapist that I model myself after, my psychologist, they said, you have to be sure you're really going to be fine-tuned healed, because if you still have underlying emotional issues somewhere along the way, that overstuffed garbage bag is going to get popped. And so I really, because of the type of trauma that I work with, from first responder to now combat vets, I had to be sure that I was healed. But so many of us, to help others, to do podcasts, to be whatever, it helps us feel better. But if we're not dealing with our own stuff, it's gonna get you at some point.
Yeah, and that's kind of what military broadcast radio is. It's helping veterans get out of their heads and just voice their, their trauma, their thoughts. And I can tell you, it's been a huge blessing to me to just be able to process the trauma. And I'm still learning that I had more trauma, that I didn't realize was trauma. When we were in Denver at CrimeCon, I told a story to Alaura and Millennial about something that happened to me. And, and after I told the story, I was like, oh, that's actually kind of traumatic.
Not good. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Because trauma is when something out of the blue, unexpected, out of your control, threatens your life, i.e. emotional life too, or your health, and stuff. And, with the military, and it's true across other populations, but, it's the hold everything in, show not having emotions is strength. And so I worked a lot with infantry, I still do, special forces and stuff. And, I had to help them understand that actually them having the emotions and their kids being able to see that in the long run is going to make their kids not do the hoorah, gotta be strong things too. And the one funny thing that I say to a lot of my guys and gals is stuff, and I tell them, and this sort of goes back to CrimeCon, is that the only people that don't get PTSD at some level are psychopaths and sociopaths.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
right.
I always say, so guess what? You're not a psychopath, because they're the mass killers. They're the ones that have no guilt, no empathy, who think the whole world owes them and stuff. So, when I do that, you sort of get that little light bulb going on. Oh, okay. Not that they totally believe it when they first start with me, but a year or two later, then it's usually okay.
At least we don't have that going for us. That's hilarious. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
But no. So what else do you do for veterans? I mean, is there any kind of programs or anything that you've done with them?
Well, it's sort of unofficially and officially. I work, officially to pay for my caravans and my home and everything else. I work with them doing assessments. I'm not VA, but the VA had to farm everything out because they were denying everything. So now we do that. And then I do a lot of pro bono counseling with a lot of them, because if they don't get the services, they have the services at the VA, but sometimes it's not what they would help them. So I do a lot of pro bono that. Then I do writing. You said about art and stuff and everything. So I do writing workshops, emotional healing through writing. Actually, I'm going to be doing one in October in honor of Brittany's birthday. But a lot of times what our experiences are all emotional. And so the real healing from trauma is the underlying emotions, the unresolved loss, the whys, the what-ifs, the unresolved shame, the self-blame that we think we could have done something different. But when we go through anything, everything's encoded through our senses: sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. And so what happens is all those emotions are embedded in our senses. So all of a sudden, you have a smell, you get triggered. You have something visually at CrimeCon. like a couple of tables down from us. I don't know if you heard about some of that. There were
No,
some visuals there that were really awful, but not Danny After Dark. It was way beyond that. But sorry, Danny. So a lot of times, although I do other art, but I do something called the use of metaphor in emotional healing. And so metaphors are saying, my loss is a 3-ton boulder that keeps pounding on my shoulders and digging me into the ground. When you do images like that, you get into the emotions in a much clearer way than to say, I still blame myself for the friend that died in my arms. And I don't, sorry to trigger guys, but that's what I deal with all the time. Yeah. And so it gets you in touch with those emotions. So I try to do a lot of writing workshops. And then there's great programs. We have somebody, who does horse therapy, riding therapy, but a lot of these processes are to really help people to heal and to realize, we saw the Vietnam vets and most of them lived with their stuff. And so it always breaks my heart when people think that you can't heal from PTSD, but you can. I mean, I could not do the work I did. I could not have survived my daughter's trauma if I hadn't already had some of that core. That doesn't mean I don't cry. That doesn't mean I scream and curse, when I'm driving through a mountain going, she would have effing loved this. Damn it, those type of things. But that's healthy anger,
It is.
So, and then, I try to, connect them to services, other services too. So, it's part of my process is just wanting to normalize it, because so many, especially of our, mostly guys, but some gals too, from the early Iraq and Afghanistan, these guys and gals deployed more times across more areas of war than any other time. Now, that doesn't mean that Vietnam had its own type of stuff and everything, but, a lot of the Vietnam vets are, we're slowly getting them into therapy and then they're unfortunately passing. But this is our new combat vets, and just so many of them, it breaks my heart when they think they're going to have to live their lives like the Vietnam vets did, because there is a way to be able to, I say this all the time, in a weird sort of way, healing through trauma and working through it, you have a more enhanced life than some people who have never gone through this. Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally does.
I can relate to that.
I've had a very traumatic life, and
that's why you're in this field.
Right?
It gives you a heart to try and help people.
Yeah, living the life that I've had and knowing the people that I know, and I mean, I'm connected to so many cases and weird stuff, and it's just like, it's all around me, and I just I learn from other people's mistakes, for one.
Yeah.
That is a gift.
It really is a gift.
Can't even learn from their own mistakes.
It really is a gift. I mean, honestly, that's one of the things that's kept me sane, is learning from other people's mistakes.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, and that's it. I mean, again, the gifts we get, some people will never experience. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would take Brittany back in a minute. But the gifts and the people I've met and the experiences I've had are just unbelievable. And so I have to live life to the fullest. I have to have that understanding, about it.
Yeah, you have to honor the fact that through her passing, you are able to bless other people. Yeah.
Well, and I'm an egotistical mother. I know 1 million people have seen that beautiful face from the side of my car and my flyers. And yes, even at this crime con, I had people come up saying they had driven from the east somewhere and they had found one of my flyers or my cards in one of the rest stops.
That's so good to hear. And she really was absolutely beautiful. And like that dress and the hair, the whole photo shoot, she was just glowing. And I'm so glad that you got those.
I still have that dress. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad to hear that.
Can't fit into it like I used to.
Okay, Maggie. So, is there anything that you want to let anybody know, or our listeners know about you, or about what you're doing, what's coming up in the near future,
and how to contact you if
Yeah.
they need to?
Yeah. How to contact me? I guess you might have some links or anything, but on Facebook, I'm facebook.com/mom.missing.Brittany, Brittany. You can email me and this will make sense, at therapoet. So the first part is like therapist, THERA. Second part is poet, obviously, POET, at AOL.com. My website, BrittanyPhillipsMurder.net, it crashed and I rebuilt it, but I do more on Facebook. I do have LinkedIn. I do have Instagram. I do have
TikTok.
Thank you. And yes, I'm 70, but I do lives.
And you did great.
No question is off the book. That one thing people go, well, what can I do? Because I'm 70, and I say this to everybody I meet. I have been so gifted by the probably over 300 local reporters in all the states and cities that I've been to. But I'm 70. I don't have that. I don't have another 20 years to get more people. I mean, I'm still always going to do caravans because I did it this time. So I guess I'm not too old yet. But if they can just even writing something short to do the hook. Have you heard about the caravan mother that's covered 330,000 miles on 24 tours by herself? Just getting 10 of your friends to do that. I once got a Unsolved Mysteries podcast that's on Netflix, but I didn't get the podcast. I didn't get the TV show Unsolved Mysteries, but they did do me on their podcast. And I am so shocked that somebody that at that national level called me. I said to them, why did you call me? And stuff, because that's me. And they said, because we had never, I think it's hailing here. They said we had never had 26 people who weren't associated with the case write us about it. And then one of my vets, one of my special forces, CW4 that I worked with for a number of years, also wrote in and, said something. They said that touched him. But the fact is I write all the national media, but if I'm the only one, then they think it's not interesting. So, and at the same time, I live by my podcast. This is such a gift. So, it's not that, it's just I want to get out to even more population.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I want her story out. I want your story out. And hopefully, hopefully somebody can pick it up.
Yeah.
Please, guys, if you guys have TikToks, make some TikToks about it.
Make TikToks.
I'll try and make some. I suck at making TikToks, but I'll try and make some.
And I'm not sure I can always figure it out, but if you want me to come on your TikTok, I will. I'm doing all this stuff, but I'm still, I know nothing about stars and all those things.
Oh, me either. Me either.
I don't know. And if you feel so inclined, guys, also hound the Tulsa Police Department. I mean, they
nicely.
With respect, but they need to.
Yeah, because they are the type, not they, because I still have many Tulsa police stop me on the road and I think I'm getting in trouble, and they'll just come up to me and go, no, I just want to tell you, back in the day when Jeff was a detective, I ran DNA for him. 5 years ago, I had somebody go, I really hate what's going on for you. Yeah. These are Tulsa police, so I don't fault them as a whole, but calling the police chief the head of homicide, more than welcome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, absolute best case scenario, they're being careless, they're being cold towards you and prideful. So
yeah, and you can even say, it doesn't have to be just my case that you hear of other cold case families. And the fact is people talking. You see, I have my ducks in my hand. Been in my hand the whole time.
We were being ducked at CrimeCon.
We haven't figured out who. I'm calling it a duck because it's a turtle and a duck.
Yeah.
So
They're adorable.
So.
Okay, there was something I was going to ask you. Oh, dang, what was it?
We were talking about the Tulsa Police Department. Before that, we were talking about reaching out to news stations.
I don't remember what it was, but
Military.
No, actually, so the Mom Across Borders, and you're also trying to help people get DNA tested. So how can they help you do that?
Well, part of it is, it was extremely expensive way back when, so I know groups like Season of Justice, and that's sort of what we're trying to do is get the names of a lot of these groups that will help fund, but we will help fundraise for that. I mean, a lot of this, hopefully I'm going to get the page going right after her anniversary and stuff. So it'll have a lot more in it about it and stuff. But if nothing else, we can talk about the process of how we did it. I have found that like Parabon, where CC Moore was, they have a lot of crowdsourcing. And people even back in 2019 were telling me, we don't want, and that's why Paul Holes gave us the money too. They said, we don't want money to be the reason you don't get it analyzed. And I think, Othram does that too. And they're trying to get more people involved and stuff, but there's a lot of good groups out there and stuff. And so, I've gotten a lot of resources, people contacting me and stuff. So we're going to try to create a sort of network of ways to do that. But like I said, I'm still learning about things because I had to do it all on my own. I mean, I begged, borrowed, and stole. Begged, borrowed, and stealed. So, but Moms Across Border, we want it to be a clearinghouse and then a place to have voice. So, if you need help on how to contact your police department, whoever that tells, I'm reading some of the thing I look at. It's the computer.
Oh, no, not at all. I was actually going to tell you whenever I saw you in person, I saw like the long flowy skirts. I got very Stevie Nicks vibes. I just love the whole very celestial.
Ever since I've been in my mid-20s, I have been told that because I wear shawls and long skirts, I don't know if you can hear the thunder.
Yeah, we can.
It's always Stevie Nicks, and I say, well, I wish I had her voice, but I tend, it's that boho that I've dressed since I was 15. I just haven't changed.
Well, you look adorable.
I absolutely love it. I dress like that a lot. Not today, not at CrimeCon, but I just adore it. So
yeah. Well, Maggie, I definitely want to learn more about what you're doing, and I'm trying to find an organization to donate to help in true crime, and I haven't figured out what I want to do yet, but I'd like to take some of the proceeds that we make here and donate them to something in true crime, since we're talking about true crime.
Well, and I'm just learning. Me at 21 years, just learning about Seasons of Justice. And I haven't really looked into it a lot, but it looks like they both do fundraising. Plus, like I was saying, Kathy Nealon, I think that's where they got a billboard for her son, based out of Georgia and stuff. So, and I think the broader the group's known, I think that's really beneficial because it's going to reach more people. But I've also been trying to get from other people, other groups, because like I said, we're starting to try to create this as a clearinghouse. And then, you know, it seemed like a number of the tables were sort of talking, advocacy.com. Did you get the flyer from them?
I don't remember seeing that one, but that doesn't mean anything.
I will send you a picture. You probably did. They're having a conference in March or so, I think, or September in Albuquerque, but they're a big advocacy group and stuff. So
writing it all down.
I did get the one with the equines, true crime and equines.
Oh, that's so nice. I was just looking at something earlier, actually. When I was in middle school, I used to, do you remember Heavenly Hooves? I don't know if they still exist anymore, but they would, it was for disabled people, and they would teach them how to ride horses. And I was young, so I got to shovel shit.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much what you do when you're a young volunteer.
But I was happy to do it. I was happy to just be there and help out. So
yeah, well, you know, that's another, you know, of course, Mac, you know, is, you know, a great person to connect with. Cheryl McCullum, you know, and
yeah, I keep hearing about her, but I've never met her.
Well, I'll be connecting you all on an email. Mac is unbelievable. I met her about 8 years ago driving through Atlanta, and she heard a story about it. So she had to ride in my car. And then I met, you know, she's 30 plus years CSI whenever she's in town. You know, she works in a department just right outside of Atlanta, but, you know, she does a lot. Then Dr. Alaura Petler is, you know, somebody does a lot of training with horses and stuff. And together they do wine and crime and equine or something and stuff. So, but they're good resources too. But I'll connect you all to them.
Awesome.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, thank you, Maggie, so much for being here with us and for telling Brittany's story. I know we didn't really get much into the actual case, but I just kind of wanted everybody to get to know you. And yeah, and I think your tenacity and your ability to adapt and to keep rolling with it, you know, is inspirational. And I can only hope, you know, that if anything were to ever happen in my life where I needed to do the same, I would, you know, measure up even half of what you've been doing.
You would, you know, and I, you know, I have to have humor too, but, you know, sometimes I call myself the Bobo doll. Do you know what a Bobo doll is?
No.
Okay. Well, I think they still have them, but when I was growing up, it was about maybe 2 feet tall, and it was usually in the shape of a weird looking clown that was very fat at the bottom.
Yes.
And had sand in it, and you'd hit it and it'd go down and then it bounced back up.
Yes, I had one of those.
Yeah. So sometimes I feel like a Bobo doll. Sometimes I feel like it lost a little bit of air, but I keep bouncing back up. You know, I'll do that till I don't bounce up anymore.
Yeah, you're doing great. And I thank you for your service to our veterans and to everybody out there that you encounter, because you really do genuinely make people's day when they meet you.
Actually, you all putting this up here because I didn't know what it was until I saw it.
Exactly. That's it.
Viewers at home.
Well, you know, you all make my day, because without this, you know, I don't survive, you know, so you have a place in my heart, you know, and stuff. And, you know, I will do this to the day I die. And then luckily I don't necessarily have to walk. I mean, I'm walking now, but, you know, I'd like to keep working with my veterans, you know, for another 10 years. I don't know if I can do that, but I'm going to try, because I just have to be able to talk and listen, you know, so.
Hey, we've got a outlet at MBR. I'm sure we would love to talk to you.
Okay.
Sounds like Brittany's really making her voice known tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Maggie. And I hope that you have a very blessed night and are safe tonight. That you don't have any tornadoes or anything.
Here in Oklahoma, you know, we have storms. We go out on the front porch and watch them.
I know.
I used to have hurricane parties in Florida, so
yeah. The only thing I'm afraid of is lightning, because my husband's actually been struck by lightning and I watched it happen. So it's very freaky.
Yeah.
Ouch. Well, you be safe too. You all have a place in my heart, as do all your listeners. And tell them feel free to contact me, and no question is off base.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Maggie.
Thank
You have a
so
blessed
much.
evening.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to say goodnight. But tomorrow I will be in Springfield, and I will be hanging out with Ashley and Nancy Simpson from the Toll Podcast. And so I'm looking forward to seeing if anybody will actually come and do an interview with us. I don't know if anybody will or not, but we're going to be stationed there at the E Factory in Springfield, Missouri, on the Missouri State University campus, to interview anybody who's willing to come and talk to us about Dee Dee Blanchard. I mean, we can talk about Gypsy as well, but I'd prefer to know more about Dee Dee Blanchard. That's why I'm going to learn more. And so anyways, we'll see what happens, but I'm excited to meet Ashley.
Yeah, I wish that I could tag along. If my car wasn't broken down and still in the air 6 months later, I would definitely at least come up for a little bit. But I'm really hoping that you guys get some leads or people that are willing to talk, because sounds like some people in Springfield just kind of want to forget about it. So
yeah, I think they want to forget about it, but at the same time, they don't know the facts, and I would hate for that to not be known. So
yeah, and you're not being forceful about it. You're letting people come to you, and if no one shows up, then it's not a loss. You still got to meet Ashley, and I'm sure you guys can still figure something out and cause some mischief somewhere else.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. No, we're not going to actually cause any mischief.
No.
But
you guys are some of the most chill and also like diligent people. Yeah. You're not.
Now we could just get Millennial to come with us. Okay. Well, I hope everybody has a very blessed evening, and that you go out and do something good to change the world for the better. And good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.